So before we get into it, we'd like to start with a land acknowledgement, particularly for us as an impact measurement and standard setting organization, how we assign value, who gets to decide what is valuable when it comes to the land outside, when it comes to the impacts that our organizations make, are really key parts in the context and the ongoing history of Canada's cultural genocide and other crimes against Indigenous peoples. And at Common Approach, it's really important for us to acknowledge this and to contextualize this work as part of our vision for the way that we take this work of improving impact measurement to contribute to the project of reconciliation here in Canada and around the world. Today, I would like to personally acknowledge that I'm joining from downtown Toronto, known as the place in the water where the trees are standing, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, as well as the Chippewa, the Wendat, and Huron peoples. These lands in Toronto were subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. That was actually an agreement between the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas, and the Haudenosaunee until later on Treaty 13 with the Crown. I myself have arrived to this land, I should say, via Trinidad and Tobago, the ancestral and traditional homelands of the Warao, the Kalinago, and the Taino peoples. Who were displaced similarly to those here in Turtle Island by the bigger project of reconciliation. My own Indigenous African ancestors were captured, trafficked, and enslaved, and forced to work on these stolen lands across what we know today as the Americas. And so it fills me with pride to work in an organization like Common Approach that is really taking seriously this look into reconciliation, this look into truth and reconciliation, acknowledging that past and navigating a way forward as we start to explore in our own work the possibilities for decolonizing impact measurement, for learning about Indigenous approaches to impact measurement, as we do have a project diving into that research that is ongoing right now. And I'm sure one of my colleagues is sharing a link to some updates on that work. Getting into it, Common Approach to Impact Measurement is comprised of these 4 related standards that are designed for and governed by social purpose organizations. And at the end of the day, what we are aspiring to do is make impact measurement better. Better meaning flexible, better meaning more relevant and more useful to social purpose organizations and the communities they serve. For anyone who needs a primer in the impact measurement space, impact refers to the portion of changes and outputs and outcomes that's the result of an organization's activities. And impact measurement is the assessment of that impact, whether qualitative or quantitative, based either on measured observations with a control group or using theory-informed estimation. In the social purpose sector, we tend to lean on the theory-informed estimation using short-term or medium-term reports on our indicators and our outcomes to give us a good enough estimation on what that would look like long-term. And it's really helpful context to know that impact measurement has been happening with social purpose organizations for over a century now. It's nothing new to the landscape, though it has come up in more force or more effort, more fashion these days. But there are some tensions in the way that it happens across the ecosystem. So we see that in the philanthropic community, impact measurement is either a free-for-all, everybody do whatever works for them in different balances, different negotiations, different relationships, or your theory of change and your indicators are chosen by or with the funder or the network. In the impact investment community, impact measurement is a free-for-all, or these shared indicators set by a third party like GRI or GIN or SASB. None of these solutions work well when we consider the impact measurement system together as a whole, with organizations who are trying to share impact data, not just with a single funder, with multiple funders, with multiple collaborators across networks. Give me 1 second to clear the screen. I think someone is actively annotating. There we go. So in this context, who chooses the methods and the measures? If the individual social purpose organization gets to choose, that's great for learning and innovation, which we are a huge fan of and proponents of here at Common Approach, but it does leave funders at a loss. In the specific dyad, meaning that bilateral relationship between an SPO and their funder, it's great for the funder and the network, but the SPO's impact measurement is fragmented because they have to come up with a new way to report, a new way to measure for each specific situation. And then in the ecosystem, we have uniform standards out there, which are useful when it comes to non-social purpose reporting, but in the social purpose context, it limits innovation and learning, and it takes power away from social purpose organizations. So what is the answer? For us, it's Common Approach. The Common Approach impact measurement was created to bridge the tension between uniform and flexible approaches for social purpose organizations, to prioritize the needs of social purpose organizations and the flexibility of impact measurement while still having quality enough data for funders, for portfolio managers, for investors, and for general networks. So we borrow or adopt the vision from Social Value International that one day in this world, decision-making, ways of working, and resource allocation will be based on the social, environmental, and cultural measures as articulated by the people whose lives are most affected by the work of the sector, which we think will lead to increased well-being, equality, and reduced environmental degradation. And this underpins our guiding principles in our work. First of all, that we are shaped by all of our users. Every single social purpose organization that adopts the standard has input and decision-making role in the standard's ongoing evolution. That also includes software developers who implement and align with our standards, funders, and other folks in the system, while we do prioritize the social purpose organization voice. We work to make our processes as accessible, inclusive, equitable, and diverse as possible, while balancing our own capacity as a small staff team. And our second principle is our commitment to building standards that place power with the social purpose organizations at the center of this work, rather than power sitting with those who hold capital, which is currently what happens in the space. So we'd like to encourage more multi-stakeholder engagement with our standards and have that community-driven mandate really drive the development and use and ongoing evolution of the standard. And so I keep mentioning this thing about better impact measurement. For us, a better impact measurement ecosystem is one that balances flexibility and uniformity. We need the flexibility so that impact measurement can be relevant and responsive for SPOs or social purpose organizations and their communities, but we do still need a certain level of uniformity so that grant makers, investors, and networks can gain insights from these portfolios of dissimilar indicators. And this is really where our sweet spot is at Common Approach, and the Common Impact Data Standard fills in as well. Our work is focused on the network. Like I mentioned before, the challenge with the existing methods or the existing solutions to impact measurement doesn't take the whole ecosystem approach into account. And so our standards are really built for networks. It's like the invention of the telephone. It's really only that great and useful to you if there are other people you want to talk to who are also connected to the telephone. And so we're working on building out these networks of users to expand the impact of our own work. So at a really high level, these are the 4 standards that we are developing. We have the Common Foundations, the Common Impact Data Standard, the Common Form, and the Common Framework. And you can always refer to our website for more details about the other 3, while today we jump into the Common Impact Data Standard. Each of our standards works on its own, works with other Common Approach standards, and works with other impact and data standards in the ecosystem. So what is the Common Impact Data Standard? It is a system for organizing impact data that makes it easier to share and aggregate that data. Softwares using our Common Impact Data Standard can be more easily designed to support a better impact analysis. It is a way to represent both an organization's impact model and the impact management platform's 5 dimensions of impact. And so if we look at the 5 dimensions of impact, these are parts of the impact norms that were developed by the impact management project that has now ended and is now housed at Impact Frontiers. And so these are the 5 dimensions that are key to articulating impact. First, what? What is the outcome? How important is it? Who is experiencing the outcome and how underserved are they? How much change is experienced by how many people and for how long? And what contribution of the efforts of the organizations has led to better outcomes for the stakeholders? And finally, the risk that the impact will be different than expected. Now, what we've done with the impact management 5 dimensions of impact is add the 6th dimension of how. And how refers to an impact model, any way that an organization illustrates their impact strategy. It elucidates the process by which you are intending to get to those impacts. It adds the context for us to understand why you got to those outcomes for those stakeholders to that extent at that time. For some, we may be familiar with the theory of change or logic model or outcome chain or impact thesis. These are all examples of different ways to do impact models. And in the Common Impact Data Standard, we've broken it down to inputs, activities, outputs, and outcomes. And so the Common Impact Data Standard is a way of representing and organizing all of these different pieces of impact data that an organization needs for the impact measurement. So first it says that there's a thing called outcomes that an organization needs to represent. And so the database has to have an object called outcome. Now for every outcome, it's related to a specific indicator. So your database has to also have a place to represent an indicator related to that outcome. Indicators can relate to multiple outcomes, so it needs to be able to represent many-to-many relationships between indicators and outcomes. Then each indicator has to have a method. The database has to have an object for method. Each indicator also has to have an indicator report. So we need to have an object for indicator report. And then indicator reports each have to have a time and a place. So then we need objects for time and place, and it goes on and on and on. And you can imagine this big web of the different objects or data points that we gather and the relationships between them. And this is essentially what the Common Impact Data Standard represents. So at the high level, looking at the technical document, the ontology itself, you can see, this is much simplified for a single outcome, a single input, a single activity. You can see the way that all of these different pieces of impact data are represented, as well as the relationships between them. So at Common Approach, we are never trying to tell anybody what those outcomes, what those indicators, what those methods should be. Instead, what this is an organizing system for your impact data. So for those of us with garages, with tool walls, you can think of a tool wall that has these outlines that tell us where to put the hammer and the saw and the wrench. You come with your own hammer, your saw, and your wrench. It can be from whichever brand of whichever company with whatever specifications that make sense for you. All the tool wall does is tell you where you can put them. And so the Common Impact Data Standard works the same way, except we're looking at indicators and outcomes and methods and reports. What those look like and how you determine them, where you get them from, are entirely up to you. What the standard does is tell us where we can put them so that it standardizes the setup of the tool wall. So that another organization who's using the Common Impact Data Standard, they also have a standard setup of their tool wall, even if their tools look different. And so what that allows is for comparability between all of our tool walls, and that enables the easier interpretation by software, easier data sharing and aggregation across a network. Essentially, what our Common Impact Data Standard does is set a place for everything and everything in its place. and it is fully extensible. So we're not limited by the dimensions of your garage. It can extend to accommodate as many pieces of impact data as your organization extends and develops in its own journey. So who is the Common Impact Data Standard for? Who uses this thing? Sort of everyone. We say sort of because it's really database builders and software developers that do the work to really dig into the technical specifics of the standard and make sure that their tools are aligned with the standard and enable their clients and their users to have access to the benefits of the standard. And then social purpose organizations and even funders who want to measure their impact can use those software tools and those databases that are aligned for their impact measurement in order to get to those benefits. And one thing also note is that the standard and the way that you use it can be populated with any frameworks, metrics, code lists of your choosing. Similarly to you coming up with your own indicators, you can put in the UN Sustainable Development Goals if that's the way that you've designed your impact model, or if you're trying to work toward supporting the Canadian Index of Wellbeing, or if you're really trying to use a methodology of social return on investment, or your own custom created systems. However it is that you contextualize, what is the impact that you want to achieve and why, our Common Impact Data Standard can accommodate it, can represent it, and can help you come up with the indicators that refer to those external frameworks and code lists that you choose. So why use the Common Impact Data Standard? Any organization that's using software tools that are aligned with our Common Impact Data Standard are putting themselves at the forefront of impact data interoperability, which I'll get into in a second, putting themselves in a situation that enables for better impact measurement, better impact management, and better impact reporting. So data interoperability is one key feature of our Common Impact Data Standard. This refers to a consistent representation of data. So going back to the tool wall analogy, if we're all using a similar mapping or outline setup on our tool walls, that's a consistent representation of data. What that allows is for a common exchange language. What that then allows is that data shared from one software can be easily interpreted by another software. Thereby, social purpose organizations get to choose whatever software they want, whatever software provides the kind of indicator development or user experience that makes sense for them, with the confidence that their impact data will be able to be shared easily from their software to their funder software to their collaborator software, and on and on. Linked data. Related to data interoperability, linked data refers to the way that we have these uniform specifications around the different impact data objects. And so once a software that is aligned with our Common Impact Data Standard knows these uniform definitions, these measurements, it makes it easier to refer to data across the web, or across the interconnections of our platforms, just like the web links pages around the world. It enables this linking of data because we're all using the same definitions. And at a higher level, our benefits include more sophisticated analysis, because using the data standard enables different ways of analyzing, contextualizing, and presenting your data. More autonomy, because you get to do impact measurement in the way that works for you, while still knowing that you'll be able to share that data in a way that is trustworthy, in a way that is sophisticated to those who are interested in it. Less paperwork, you don't have to come up with customized ways of reporting and sharing your impact data every single time. The Common Impact Data Standard simplifies that for you and enables the generation of multiple different ways of custom reports. Greater visibility tied to search engine optimization on the web makes it easier to tag and find your information on the web and increase your visibility as an organization. More versatility, because you're able to pull in code lists and references to all of these other external frameworks in the market. Like I mentioned, the SDGs or social return on investment, or if you're trying to become a B Corp, it's more versatile to a multiplicity of ways of contextualizing that impact model and better impact. At the end of the day, each organization does create good impact on their own, but in this way, when we're able to better collaborate and share and coalesce our information, it creates these possibilities of even better impact when we work together as networks. So how do you use the Common Impact Data Standard? Like I mentioned, it's a interesting way of answering that question, or interesting question to ask rather, for social purpose organizations and for funders who would like to measure their impact as a social purpose organization. Essentially, all you really need to do is use a software that has implemented the standard to date. We are very proud to have these 6 different softwares, all aligning with the standard at different tiers with us to date. We have a few more in conversations and collaborations with folks at Microsoft and Salesforce, and we're always trying to expand this list and extend our reach to the organization, to the softwares that folks are already using. So if you're already on a software that you love for your impact measurement, we're not trying to force you to come onto one of the ones that's already aligned. We're happy to help that software get aligned. Please introduce us, broker that introduction. A lot of times with software companies, it does take some time and effort depending on where they're at in their development schedule, but really hearing from a client that they'd like to be able to access this Common Impact Data Standard in their impact measurement does wonders for helping us make the case and supporting them in that alignment. If there's anyone in the room thinking, gosh, we are not ready for software, I am still managing all these PDFs and Excels and making sense of this thing called impact measurement. Well, step 1 is one of our other standards that I won't get into too much detail about today, though if you have questions, please let us know. And it's really just meeting this minimum standard. The Common Foundations articulates the minimum standard across all different impact measurement standards and breaks down the how of impact measurement for those now starting out. I want to acknowledge that this is just step 1 in a multi-step journey to getting ready for software, but it can help you do that gap analysis to improve your impact measurement practice, and then we can find you better resources and capacity builders to get you from there to software implementation, including the work that we do in advocating that funders should be funding this work, funding more HR time towards impact measurement, and of course, the licensing costs of software. Now, how do grant makers and impact investors get to use this standard? So from the perspective of being a funder to organizations who want to report or who have to report to you on the impact they've made with the dollars you've provided them, we have articulated a funder alignment journey. So while we want the focus to be on the social purpose organization, filling in the different pieces of the data standard in the software and the way that that makes sense for them, in the meantime, funders can align with all 4 Common Approach standards in a stage structure that allows for flexibility and responsiveness to SPO needs. And one of my colleagues is going to drop a link to the web page that really breaks down the funder alignment journey overall. But today we're focused on the data standard. So really, when it comes to the Common Impact Data Standard specifically, what you're doing is getting your systems ready to receive data from the SPOs that want to use it to send their data to you instead of having to create these new custom reports every time. So step 1 in that journey, and just breaking down the different properties or objects, impact data pieces in the Common Impact Data Standard. You're able to receive information about the organization, the outcome, the indicator, and indicator report. Any of our currently aligned softwares can help you do that, and we're happy to help the software you're doing to get there as well. At stage 2, we get a bit more sophisticated, detailing more about the stakeholders, the outcomes, the indicator report, and the impact report. Any software aligned at least the essential tier can support this reporting. And finally, stage 3 includes everything from stage 1 added on to stage 2 and more detail about your impact model, your indicator report, and your impact report. And any fully aligned software can support this reporting. So similarly for social purpose organizations, funders can use one of our aligned softwares in terms of impact measurement, but we know that a lot of you are using grant and fund management softwares. And so similarly to the social purpose organizations, introduce us, help us make the case to your grant and fund management software to get aligned with the Common Impact Data Standard, so that all of your fundees who want to use it, who want to be able to have this, simpler but better way of sharing their data with you, can have access to that. We're always happy to provide free alignment support. And you can get in touch to find out more. So really, the bottom line is that the Common Impact Data Standard offers a uniform representation of an indicator and an impact model, but not uniform indicators or impact models. It's important because it gives each organization the flexibility to specify what they want to measure and how they want to measure it.